Awesome. Yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Sure.
Yeah, so my name's Javier. I'm from the CSU Counseling Center. Yeah, and I'm going to be talking today about how to build grit with a growth mindset. And so my hope is that by the end of this presentation, you all are familiar with what these concepts are and have an idea of how you can actually apply it into your personal academic lives and really be able to use it. And before I begin, I just want to give a shout out to one of the other contributors who couldn't make it today, Nuha Al-Shabani. All right, cool. So I have several objectives here, and I guess I should also start off by saying that while there is some content here and there is some lecturing, I am going to leave some spots for discussion. So I really want you all to think about how this information applies to your own life, and I'll provide some opportunities for you to share, all in the interest of time, of course. But I do have, yeah, 4 objectives here. One is to define what growth mindset is, distinguish between growth mindset and fixed mindset. This will make sense in a minute. Define what grit is, and then how to use these 2 principles in your daily life. So let's start from the top. What the heck is growth mindset? So growth mindset is really a belief that basic abilities can grow. So it's a kind of mindset that you adopt that any abilities, knowledge, skills that you have can be built through things like practice, through effort, through application and persistence. So even areas where you feel like you're not very competent in, someone with a growth mindset would approach that area and say that I can be competent in it as long as I practice, apply effort, and kind of just persist through the difficulties and challenges. And so because of that, individuals who kind of who take in this belief and really hold on to it view challenges as existing on a learning curve. So if you view something or you are approaching a challenge you've never met or faced before, you would say that although I'm not good at it now, I will be good at it eventually. And that's where that not yet idea comes in. So if someone asked you, let's say, hey, are you good at math? Someone with a growth mindset would say, not yet, versus no, I'm not good at math, right? So individuals with this kind of approach to thinking and this kind of belief view failures as opportunities to learn rather than setbacks, and view discomfort as cues for growth. And I don't mean like, like suffering, right? Or like physical discomfort, but more of that like psychological discomfort, maybe emotional discomfort we feel when we're trying something out new for the first time. And so individuals with this mindset hone into that feeling and say, actually, I'm learning here. I'm growing in some way. And another way to understand what growth mindset is to compare it to its counterpart, which is a fixed mindset. And this is a belief that abilities cannot be developed. And I think it's really common to fall into this kind of thinking trap sometimes. And individuals who have this kind of belief have a tendency to compare themselves to others. They might avoid challenges because they don't see it as an opportunity to get better, or they may think that their current like competence level doesn't quite meet the challenge, so why even bother with it? They may give up easily as a result. They may see effort as pointless, and they may ignore constructive criticism, all because individuals with this kind of belief don't think that they can grow, that they can learn. And so someone who has this kind of mindset may say something to themselves along the lines of, I'm stupid at this, I shouldn't even bother trying. And so to just kind of help you all to really understand what this looks like, I wanted to provide a kind of table here that lets you see how someone with a fixed mindset and someone with a growth mindset would respond to the same situation. So if you have a fixed mindset and you fail a test, you'd walk away from that test saying, I suck at math. I'm not good at it. Me failing is a reflection of me not being good at that thing. And as a result of that, you're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel embarrassed. And a consequence of that feeling is you're going to choose to mentally check out or give up in math. And I think, some of us can resonate with this idea Well, we've maybe even said to someone like, oh, I'm not a math person, you know? And so what that does is it makes us less likely to approach things that have math. And that's just an example. Um, Someone with a growth mindset in that same situation would think about it with a little bit more nuance. So they would say, I studied hard, but I waited to the last minute, right? So they're able to really examine, what are the things that really contributed to me failing rather than making this blanket statement. And as a result, yeah, they'd feel bad, but they have hope because they feel like they've gained something. They've gained a lesson that'll help improve their ability to take tests in the future. And so they might walk away from that situation saying, all right, I feel badly. I am feeling a little bit hopeful. And I've learned through this failure to manage my time better. So what does that look like in a situation that's a little bit more positive? So if you pass the test, someone with a fixed mindset would come out of that and say, man, I'm a natural at this. I got this. And so as a result of feeling that way or saying that to themselves and having that belief, they would have happiness, but it'd kind of be fleeting. It'd just be like, yeah, I knew I could do it. And the happiness would come, it would go, and we'd feel kind of indifferent about it because we would just chalk it up to our talent. And so a result of that would be that we apply less effort on studying in the future because we think that this is just a result of like a natural talent that we have. The opposite of this kind of mindset, a growth mindset, someone would identify what they did well, specifically what things did they do well that contributed to them passing the test. So they might say to themselves, prioritizing my time to studying is what helped me pass this test. So you'd feel happy because you passed it. You'd feel joy because you passed it, but you'd also feel motivated to continue doing the thing that you have been doing that's led to the success. And so you'd walk away from it saying, all right, I'm going to use the same strategy again. And what's important to recognize with this stuff is that they kind of exist on a spectrum, right? So you're not fully fixed-minded and you're not fully growth-minded. Like individuals can vary situation to situation on whether they adopt one kind of mindset over another. So you might be, you might be you might have like a fixed mindset in social situations. And you might say to yourself, I'm just socially awkward. Like I just don't do well in social situations. But you might be very growth-minded in academics, right? And you're able to think with a little bit more nuance and identify the things you've done well as the areas that you can improve on. And so as I've gone through this, and I know that I've gone through it pretty quickly, I want you all to kind of take some time and think of a time when you used a fixed mindset. What was the experience like for you? And similarly, think of a time you used a growth mindset and reflect on what that experience was like for you. Very similar to the table I drew out. I just want you all to maybe take a minute or two and just reflect on moments in when you've used one mindset over another and what that experience has been like. And then I might open it up and ask if a couple of you would be interested in sharing. Yeah, so I'm curious if there's anyone who's willing to take that leap of faith and just, tell me what experience came up for you, what came to mind.
I'll go ahead and talk.
Okay.
Cool. One thing that I always think of is how much kindness and grace I constantly show to other people, and like how easy it is for me to, when I see somebody in a fixed mindset, to encourage them to have that growth mindset. But I always find it so hard to give myself credit, and I see that struggle with those around me. Like we are our own worst critic, and like Alexandra put in the chat, sometimes those negative thoughts are easier because once we think them for so long and don't give us that opportunity to grow, it becomes a habit. And so those negative thoughts are just more of a habit than something we actually want to think about ourselves. And the times where I've really challenged myself to give myself credit that it's not that I'm failing in this moment, it's that I'm growing, or that I may not know everything now, but I'm learning and trying to
Mm-hmm.
improve. Those moments I made the most progress, because when you're having that fixed mindset, it feels like you're running your tires in the mud, and it's
Totally.
very like nothing happens or changes because you're kind of not even challenging yourself to try and grow. And so anytime I've tried a growth mindset and tried to be a little kinder with myself, although it was overwhelming, I would start with one
Mm-hmm.
negative thought that I knew I repeatedly had. Maybe it was a body image thing, or just like not giving myself credit at work. And I started with one thought to challenge each day, and it's
Hmm.
made just life a lot easier. So I love this
Yeah,
presentation. I love the points you're making so far.
that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think that's really good insight. And I think one of the things you're speaking to is like how easy this can become. Using one mindset over another can become habitual when we're not really being intentional with the way we think about things. And so if we tend to lean into being a little bit more fixed minded sometimes, it's going to feel very effortful, and we're going to have to be really intentional about being more growth minded. And then after a while, with repetition and discipline of doing that, then that can kind of become our default. That can kind of become the mindset we choose to rely on automatically and without much intention. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Um, Anyone else willing to share kind of what came up for them before we move on?
I'll share just quickly. I did over the summer started an Ashtanga yoga practice. So just kind of doing the same yoga every morning, and I was able to keep up with it for a while. But then I hit a wall where like I felt like I was. It was like kind of a combination of feeling bored with it and also like feeling like it was putting too much pressure on my knee. And rather than kind of adjusting, I just kind of completely gave up. But my intention was to like develop some sort of yoga practice that was something I could do every day. And so
Right.
that was like my fixed mindset was like, I'm just going to stop right now.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that that's good feedback. Like the second you're feeling discomfort, your fixed mindset was like, oh, stop doing that. Like, please, whatever you do. But your growth mindset was like, just kind of make some alterations and you're solid, So yeah, that's a perfect example of how it shows up in even like a yoga practice. So I appreciate you saying that. Okay. So I'm going to transition here. It lets me to talking about grit. Now, grit is also kind of a belief that we have, kind of a mindset that we can adopt. And grit is really about having both the passion and perseverance needed to follow through on commitments and achieve long-term goals. And really what it's tapping into is understanding that in order for us to succeed, we can't just rely on talent. We can't just rely on things we've identified we're good at. We have to, use our talent combined with effort to achieve or to get skill. And then if we really want to achieve, we have to refine that even further by applying additional effort. And so you've probably heard in some circles, like referring to someone as gritty. And that's really talking about someone who's willing to persist even in the face of adversity, and to do it with like a sense of intention and purpose. And so what grit isn't is it's not talent, it's not luck, and it's not just having a desire. Grit is really, as Angela Duckworth said, who's the lead researcher on grit from the University of Pennsylvania. She said that grit is about having a goal you care about so much that it organizes and gives meaning to almost everything you do. And it's about holding steadfast to that goal. So having a vision, having a sense of purpose, and then being willing to just kind of grind and persevere through it, even when you experience adversity. And kind of it's through that you start to refine and grow in the areas that you're intending to. Okay. So some ways to actually bring this idea to life. It sounds simple, but seriously, just pursue what interests you. And this might be hard when we're doing tasks that are kind of monotonous, and it might seem even mundane, but try to identify aspects of what you're doing in your everyday life that interest you. So maybe a certain topic in your class in that day doesn't interest you, but the idea of just learning interests you. Or maybe there's a certain topic within that giant content area that interests you. Finding something to kind of sink your teeth into. Another thing is to just practice. Just continue practicing, practicing with intention the area that you're wanting to refine. Finding purpose, as I kind of alluded to before, having hope, and then surrounding yourself with gritty people. It can be contagious being around other people who have that kind of mindset, who persevere, who are motivating, who are encouraging, who have a vision and pursue it. And that's something that you can kind of be intentional about, is trying to find a group of people that you can surround yourself with and make it more likely for you to pursue things that you're interested in, or things that are challenging. So let me check the time here. So this one, I just want to kind of be maybe a reflection for yourself. We don't necessarily have time for you to share, but I just want you to think about a time that you pursued a goal that you were passionate about and you didn't accomplish it. Think about what held you back from achieving that goal, and then identify one way in which the failure changed you for the better. So what did you learn? And this kind of combines both grit and a growth mindset. So you can kind of see how these two overlap with one another. You know what? Maybe we can leave time for one or two people to share. Actually, we have a little bit more time than I was anticipating. If you're comfortable.
I can share.
Thank you.
I feel like the thing that I just think about, like, generally with things that when I've failed, is that, like, I remember, like, what I learned from more of my failures than I do, like, any of my successes. Like, anything that I've, like, done well or gotten, like, an award for or something, it's like, yeah, like, that's nice, but I remember, like, oh, don't do that thing again that made you fail. And then I don't, and then I don't fail for that reason again.
Totally. Yeah. I think failures definitely sting a lot more. And it can be easy to, coming out of a failure, to not want to do that thing again, just out of self-preservation. And I think that's where grit and growth mindset can come in, of being like, I understand I failed, but what can I learn from it to apply to the next instance? So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and keep going. So I wanted to provide kind of an illustration of that kind of summarized all my points up to this point, of how someone who's gritty and someone who has a growth mindset responds to a challenge versus someone who isn't gritty and has a fixed mindset. And I think that this might resonate or be relevant for many of you. And really what it is when individuals are faced with a challenge, people who have a growth mindset and are gritty are much more likely to approach the challenge. So in the case of academics, like, let's be honest, school is stressful, especially now. We're dealing with a lot of challenges. And in the face of those challenges, it can be very easy to develop kind of avoidant tendencies, to not send that email, to not study, to maybe wait to the last minute to turn in the assignment. But individuals with a growth mindset who are feeling gritty are like, even though I'm feeling this way, I'm still going to kind of stay in the pocket. I'm going to try to approach the thing that's uncomfortable rather than shy away from it. And as someone was alluding to it before, if you do this repetitively, it can become habitual. So the second you're feeling that sense of stress and you're feeling that discomfort, you learn to lean into it rather than lean away from it. So I thought this was kind of a cool illustration to highlight how our mindsets can impact the way that we feel and impact our behaviors, to either approach the thing that's frightening or to shy away from it. I think another way to kind of conceptualize everything that I've talked about is to think about our own comfort zones. So this is the way that I like to think about a growth mindset and grit, is that individuals who have a fixed mindset kind of like to stay in their comfort zone. They like to stay in their own little bubble, and things outside of their comfort zone feel a little bit more threatening and make them feel vulnerable and make them feel discomfort. And they don't like that. While adopting a growth mindset and being gritty can make us more likely to approach areas outside of our comfort zone, so that our discomfort zone becomes our growth zone, right? And so it's not about stretching ourselves all the way to the panic zone, right? So if we're not good at public speaking, then maybe we shouldn't, volunteer to give a speech to a 5,000 member audience, right? But it's about taking baby steps. So what's like one little step outside of my current comfort zone that I can lean into that will lead to me developing a kind of confidence in public speaking. And so it's being mindful of kind of where your boundaries are and what it'll take for you to kind of stretch yourself a little bit, not too much, but just enough so that you experience growth. And when you do that, your discomfort zone turns into your learning zone. And when you stay in your learning zone long enough, that becomes your new comfort zone. And so slowly over time, you notice that your comfort zone is expanding and expanding, and you're able to do more and more. And I'm sure that if you all were to reflect on different moments in your life, like it's very likely that your comfort zone now compared to when you were young has changed significantly. There's things that you're comfortable doing now that you likely weren't comfortable doing then. And I think it speaks to how our comfort zone evolves and how it changes over time just by a willingness to do things that are outside of it. So as I'm saying this, is anyone having like any reactions, any thoughts related to this idea?
I actually like to compare this idea to like having new classes, for example, each semester. I'm a little shy at first, but then as I get to know other classmates or begin to understand the instructor or the course material, then I slowly move into, my new comfort zone. So I really resonate with this graphic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's a great example of just, it's like the unfamiliarity and the uncertainty. But if you stay in there long enough, it becomes familiar, and we feel like we have a little bit more a sense of control and a sense of comfort. So yeah, totally resonate with that.
This also holds true. So I'm a non-traditional student, a bit older than people on the call. But when you have kids, your comfort zone changes. You have a set way that you're going for all this time by yourself and everything else. And you have kids, you have different responsibilities, but you also want your kids to grow and have a growth mindset. And you may do things that you would have never done unless you had kids. So it takes you out of that comfort zone in order to realize where you want to go.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely circumstances that give rise to that. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to learn a language, and conversation is the most difficult part of learning a language.
Of course.
And I would always hang back and try to find the easy way to speak whatever I'm trying to convey.
Yeah.
And with encouragement from my teacher, I found that I'm learning to listen to, broadcasts in that language.
Yeah.
So that it gets me to feel more comfortable listening and also speaking better. So that
For sure
wasn't my most comfortable thing to do. And I'm learning to grow from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, discomfort's called discomfort for a reason. It doesn't feel very good.
Yeah.
But in those moments, being resourceful, whether it's having someone who can encourage you or finding resources that'll kind of help to bridge that gap, it can be so like powerful and useful in those moments. So yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. So I want to end on a note that allows you all to kind of put everything that I've said so far and everything that everyone shared so far into practice. And there's going to be 4 ways that we really do this. And one of the ways, as I was talking about grit, that's really important is identifying your why or identifying your purpose. And so what I want you all to do is to take a moment here to identify some values of yours that are central to you. Try to limit it to maybe like 2 or 3 or 4, but things that really, really you find of value to you or of importance to you or provide a sense of purpose for you. Maybe take a moment to write down a few of these, and then I'll talk about how these are relevant to the next part of the activity. Maybe like another 30 seconds or so. I know this can be hard to think about. All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next part of the activity. So we were talking about expanding our comfort zones. And so what I'd like you to do now, and this will make sense in a minute, is to pick some activities, behaviors or settings that make you uncomfortable, similar to Michelle sharing, like speaking a foreign language. So something that is sitting kind of on the cusp of your comfort zone. Maybe identify a few activities, behaviors, or settings, and then identify what specific of those areas, which areas are worth pursuing, right? So maybe take a few moments to do that. And while folks are kind of reflecting on this, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, feel free to share. All right. I can't see everyone's faces, but does anyone need any more time, or they feel like they're good? Okay, cool. All right. So the next part, and this is where we incorporate some of our values, is I want you to think about the values you chose, and then think about the areas of discomfort that you decided are worth pursuing, and identify which values you think you could rely on to help you approach that discomfort. Which ones seem relevant in that pursuit? So we'll start with that, identifying which of those values you could rely on to help you approach discomfort. And then specifically, think about how you can actually use those values. What does it look like to actually put it into practice? Maybe take a moment to do this step. All right. And then after you've really thought this section through, I want you to translate this into 1 or 2 goals for yourself for the next week specifically, about how you plan to expand your comfort zone, keeping in mind that value. And so when I think about goals, I like to use the SMART principle, which is make sure that the goal is specific, make sure that it's measurable, so that way when you reach it, you know you've reached it, that it's attainable, so make it realistic, that it's relevant and personally meaningful for you, and that it's time-based, so you have kind of some accountability and something that you're shooting for. So as an example, I wanted to provide one. So let's say that I have a value for courage. And so I have a value for courage, but I'm noticing I feel really anxious and nervous about reaching out to my professor for help, and admitting that I need help in my chemistry class, right? So my value would help me to think about, okay, what would courage look like in this situation? Well, courage would look like approaching discomfort and showing a willingness to reach out to my professor. And so taking in account the SMART principle, my goal would be to send 1 email to the professor by this Friday to schedule an office hour and discuss my trouble with writing chemical equations. So you're really, yeah, this is just like a great example of it. And maybe in like the next minute or so, if a couple of you are willing to share, if you're comfortable, your own goal that might inspire other folks, and the value you're relying on in this situation as well. Yeah, and you all can you can feel free to you know, kind of shout it out if you're comfortable discussing what value you're relying on, the area of in your discomfort zone, and kind of your plan for addressing it. I know it can be challenging talking about something personal, so I want to respect that.
So my goal, or it's not really a discomfort, but it's something that I want to work on. It's being a little more active or eating a little healthier, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think the main values would be self-growth maybe, or consistency. And then one goal of mine is to go on the treadmill for 30 minutes each day, and then try to work my way up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great goal. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I think my goal is kind of similar to that, just because I don't know if I have a lot of things that I'm like necessarily uncomfortable with, but it's just about setting up like a real routine for going to bed, and like not falling asleep on the couch, not staying up later than I should, so I don't wake up groggy and tired. So I said that I was going to lay out my clothes, take a shower, and have my lunch ready for the morning, and to put screens down 30 minutes before I was going to bed.
Yeah, that's a good one, and it's definitely relevant and meets a lot of the SMART principles. Let's see what time we have here. Yeah, so for the interest of time, and thank you all for sharing, I do want to introduce just one last aspect of this that it's very important. So Catherine, I think you said like sometimes the failures stick a little bit more than the successes that we have. And so one way to kind of counteract that is to reflect on our experience actually pursuing the thing that was uncomfortable for us or challenging for us. And specifically identify 3 things you did well. Identify 2 areas that you could have improved on. And then what's one lesson that you've gleaned from having gone through it? And so this is something that as you all start to try putting this into practice, making sure that you incorporate this reflection piece, which in the beginning is going to require a lot of like effort and intentionality. But over time, as Kristen was talking about, it can become habitual. And so hopefully this is something that will be of use to you all. And yeah, I wanted to leave a little bit of time, about 4 minutes, if anyone has any questions or comments in the remaining minutes we have here.
I just could say something really quick. Everything in this presentation was really awesome, and I know everyone in here agrees. One thing that I've realized and that I've been able to grow out of over the years, just with social media and high expectations we set for ourselves, we see everybody sharing their successes, and nobody really like talks about the failures. So a lot of the time we have this false idea that when we're failing, it is like embarrassing or not normal, but it really is. And a lot of people here and myself, like anytime I've tried to fail, anytime I have failed, I've tried to take the positives from it and maybe even bring awareness to it. Because when we create that safe space for others to realize failing isn't that bad, like it's okay to make mistakes, and as long as you're growing from them. And I just loved everything we talked about here today. And I've set some goals for myself. And I know there's things that I
Awesome.
can do more often that gets me out of my comfort zone. So thank you so much for sharing everything today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And yeah, thank you for that. I think that's really good insight. And yeah, it's nice to hear what your process is related to this stuff.
You learn from your failures, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's, you have to fail, or you don't have to fail, but from failure comes growth.
Exactly. Definitely. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you all for engaging with this material and taking time out of your day to listen to me and showing a willingness to learn. So I really appreciated having this space. And I will turn it back over to Matthew.
Yes, thank you, Javier. That was a fantastic presentation. Like, I'm going to echo what Kristen said. I love this topic. This is something that I've really worked to implement into my life over the last couple of years. And if anybody's just getting started on that journey of kind of embracing all of this and positivity and all that kind of stuff, it really can impact you in ways you probably won't even expect. So go forward with it courageously.